Hey, everybody. So I just wanted to say hello. I'm glad I got it all together this week, and I actually did get myself um, on right with my sharing and everything. It has been a bit of, I don't know, a season for me. So, anyway, here I am again, and I wanted to talk with you today further about how you kind of move from a prototype to production. And I wanted to talk to you about this in terms of something that I've been working on with my Material Girl. So last week at Material Girl, I was working with upcycling bags into various products using masking tape. And the big winner, okay, was this particular beach bag that I created. Again, this is from my Fresh Direct bags, and it was pretty cool because it also has a pocket inside. This is a nice pocket for putting things in when you go to the beach. And you can also see that I took some time to really design inside, and I wanted to do that because I wanted to actually create this lining stripe that you see. This bag is bright and colorful. It uses a variety of different colors to stand out and to recede. So for example, I chose these citrus, the graphics, which I love, and I used the edging as orange, but I used the center pieces as green. And so you'll even see the inside, I've had to, on this side, use some yellow. Now, I wanted to talk to you about this because this is prototypes. I also reused these handles from my bag. And what you can see is that I've actually reinforced them with some fishing line that I sewed in. Now, the bag was a big hit, and I don't think that that's any big surprise because it's a great sized tote. It's waterproof in the bag and also in the masking tape. It makes a statement. It also is kind of fun because it has some words on it. Hey, Neil, how are you? Glad to see you too. We're going to talk about how I went from this prototype to my next iterations of upcycling bags into bags. And so everybody really loved this one. So, but here's what happened is when I actually made this particular bag, I took the entire bag apart. I took an entire 2 bags apart. I stripped everything off of them and just used them as fabric. I chose a lot on my design, okay? But one thing that happened was, and you can maybe see this from the bottom, my awning stripes did not match up. Now, this doesn't really bother me, but it could bother a customer. So it's important to understand that, you might need to do this. As I showed you, my securing and using the bag just with masking tape with my handles required reinforcement. So that was another thing that I learned. But you can also see that I used an awful lot of masking tape. Duct tape. And so the duct tape, it's not super expensive, but it is part of my cost for making the bag. Now, the original bags that I'm using are free to me, okay? But there are better ways to utilize my materials and also my time. So let's just remember, and let me just back up a second. Let's talk about the principles of making multiples of a product and pricing. All right. So when we price something, of course, first of all is the amount of materials it's cost. So the bags themselves here are costing me nothing, but the duct tape is costing me for each bag. So I told you I used on this bag, I had to use 3 different colors of the duct tape. So I wasn't really efficiently using the the duct tape. And again, I needed to reinforce it, so I wanted to do inside and out. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that. Those were all very valuable lessons that I learned when making the actual prototype. But as I'm starting to make them so that they can actually be sold, one of the things that I first wanted to point out is the original bag already has a finished edge at the top, and it already has a reinforced and sewn handle. So in my first prototype, I had taken all that apart. So I had to use the duct tape to reinforce the top, and I had to reinvent the placement of the handle. Now listen, this is a much more exciting bag visually than this one so far. But again, I'm moving into something where I have to find the happy medium of what is reasonable for me to do, what does not cost too much in terms of materials that I need to use, and also what in the world is going to be doable for me so that my time is compensated for. It took me a while to do this. Now, also remember, because this was my prototype, it wasn't just the making of this or the unmaking of it in the beginning. It also, I was making design choices along the way here. And with this particular product, I'm going to constantly be making design choices with the bags, okay? But the design choices are not as in-depth as they were on my prototype. So I started by understanding that I did not need to create a finished edge when I already had one. And I also didn't need to create a finished edge, on my pockets. Now I realized that, I'm going to show you in a second, but I realized that in my prototype, because as I showed you, I used a piece of the original bag that was already finished and sewn. So that's here, you can see it's folded over and it was beautifully sewn. So I realized that that would work and that I didn't really need to reinvent the wheel, if you will. So what I've come up with now is all I've needed to do is to do an interior at the base, because that's where a lot of the pressure is going to come. So you can see the silver down there. It's got red on the outside. The two sides have only one piece of duct tape down each side. I could go in there and reinforce this if I wanted to, but I have a feeling that for the purpose of this bag, it's going to be okay. Now I could have also put pockets inside if I wanted to, but on these few, the two that I've made here that I'm going to show you now, I've decided to just utilize them on the outside, because what they're doing here is they're hiding the Fresh Direct logo. And I've chosen to use the same bag here. Now I don't have to. I could use the other side of these bags, which are white. As I showed you all before, the best part about these bags is that they're printed on one side. So if you don't like what's on one side, you don't like the colors, you don't like what they are, you can actually use a nice clean white palette by just flipping it over and using the inside. Okay, so again, I was covering up the logo because people may not want the logo in them. As I was doing that, I was trying to place the grapes that I had so that they would also make an interesting design with the grapes that are on the bottom piece. They are not uniform necessarily on each side. In fact, this pocket is slightly lower than this pocket. They don't, so this side, I didn't come all the way down with my stripes from top to bottom. This side, I did. So there's still a little variety in the bags. There's still a little personal touch. There's still a little bit of design choice going on, but much less than what I was doing in that big prototype that I showed you. I also want to tell you something that is important to think about. And so these things don't really bother me. You know, there's more of the duct tape on this side than there is on this side. Keep in mind, I'm probably going to sell this bag for $5. So it's a little bit more of a disposable buy. And because it's upcycled, there may be less of a concern about that. And remember, you're either carrying it with this side out or this side out. You're not carrying it with both sides out at the same time. What is really important when you're doing this particular technique is to be consistent with how you lay the edges of the duct tape. So for example, I do the bottom first and I do it both sides so that I reinforce it because a lot of the weight is going to be there and I don't want it to bust open, right? So that means that is always going to be all the way across and underneath the strips that come down the side. So it is important for you to determine what will be on top and what will be underneath as you're working on this. So for example, here's a good idea. So I wanted this to be under the side. So you can see I put, this means I had to put the pocket on before I sealed up the sides. So thinking about that in terms of what you want to have happen and how you want it to have happen is really important. Also, I knew that I wanted all of my verticals here to stop at the sewing line. And I consistently did that on both sides. Now on this side, what you'll see is I wanted my vertical, which was going all the way down, to go underneath my masking tape. I'm sorry, I don't know why I can't say duct tape today. My duct tape on the bottom. So that meant that my horizontal sits on top. So then you want to be pretty careful about where those edges hit. It's really important to make sure that it looks clean and well done. Now I have these other bags that are the cherry bag, and I wanted a little bit more of the awning stripe here. So, but this is a tone-on-tone awning stripe. So on one side, what I did, I decided that I could do 2 pockets. Again, this is covering up the Fresh Direct. So here's one pocket and here's the other. This one's maybe for your keys. Oops, sorry, over here. And this one may be slightly larger for your phone. There is a third pocket on the other side that's not super deep. So that one, well, it actually is super deep, but I had to put 2 pieces together. So it looks like it isn't. So this might actually hold something, I don't know, like hair stuff that you're going to use on the beach, etc. But again, I have just the reinforcement on the inside. Now, this is very tone on tone, as I said. And one of the other things that was really important is, well, I liked the green and the white with the red. So I used a little bit of the green and left some of the white of the Fresh Direct sign on one side, whereas this one looks much more like a wall. Now I'm also at the mercy of how the bag itself is constructed from the pieces. So for example, on this one, the reason I was able to do grape on grape is because that's how the original bag was printed. This one, the pieces that I used that were grape on grape full there are cherry with dark red. So this is where I had to go with this. Now, what I think would make this bag stellar, and thankfully I have some more cherry bags, is I would actually like to use the green duct tape with this red, and that would really make it sing. So the next one that I make from the cherries, I will be making that way. Now, these all look pretty normal and pretty much the same. They're just sort of playing with the pockets. And again, I could play with interior pockets as well. But keep in mind, what I'm trying to do here from the one that I made is consider how I can do them quickly, relatively, professionally, so that they look good, okay, and utilize what's already been done for me. Okay, so now let me show you, what I have been doing with another group of them. So I've been trying to figure out how to make kind of a little backpack. So here we go. You can see it's kind of, we've got our front and our back. I have to put straps in here. So again, I'm going to have to reinforce utilizing the fishing line sewing method here. So this is going to make this a little more expensive bag. But you can see that I have included a pocket here, which I haven't taped yet. And I've also folded the top in such a way that there's going to be a little pocket here and a little pocket here. I haven't put them down yet. But again, I am using what's already been done for me, and I'm using the sewing that's already happened. Again, these are different parts of the original bag than the bag that I showed you. So let me show you my cherry one. So my cherry one, I think is going to need a pocket on the outside so we can get rid of this. Okay. But you'll see again, the pieces of the bag that I've been using for this on the cherry one were printed differently than on the grape one. So I think there might be a white pocket here. And I think on this one, I'm hoping to use the green tape so that I can have it. But you see, again, we can have two small or half pockets here, or I could actually make this into a full pocket. But where it is and what it is, I don't think that the full pocket's going to be a good idea. I think it'll open too much. So we'll put a piece of tape here and then at the edges, and we'll have two small pockets. So again, I think you can see how utilizing what you're given starts to make this into something that's more repeatable. And so with this idea, what I am going to do is, so this will take longer. It is taking a little bit more material, and it's going to take me time to put in and reinforce the backstrap straps. Or I could make it into a crossbody, but it's still going to have the same issue. So this one would end up being perhaps a $10 bag. And that's sort of the way that we will look at them. Now, just to keep going even further and to show you, because if you've been watching my Material Girl, you'll know that my project last week that I introduced while I showed these bags, and my bag was the showstopper, I actually was making pillows. So here is another way that you could consider making the pillows. And we can take these 4 pieces, make them into a larger square, okay, reinforce it at the back. But again, I'm trying to use what we already have, even though I'm going to have to cover this up. It will be reinforced. But think about it this way. I have 2 identical pieces. All right. I could shift it so that one piece has a vertical and the other side has a horizontal. I could also, if I don't want any of the happiness guaranteed, that doesn't bother me. I think it's kind of cool. I could also do them on the white side where I've used silver, and I can do them both the same, or I can do them, again, horizontal and vertical. This could make a really, really great pillow, a larger pillow. waterproof, easy to use, out your backyard, give you a little refresh, pops of color on your yard furniture. But I was going down the Peach Road, and here's my next idea. So I've taken essentially what is one half of these, and I've started to layer them. So I'm now getting kind of this ruffly feel and visual texture to the front. And it just so happens, I found this out just as I was getting ready to talk to you guys, this has not been done yet, that it actually lines up almost exactly with this. So now these guys, I'll do them in the peach, but we'll do another 2 of these with the peach, and that will become the backdrop for this front, which I'm going to leave open on this side. So essentially, this is how the bag would work. It will have a ruffled decorative front that is affixed to a back that is then connected to the final back. So this won't become a flap. It will actually just become a decorative part of the front. But each one of these will be stuck down separately so that, you know, they can have some movement to them. I think this is going to be kind of interesting. It could also be a pillow that way. There are a lot of ways to kind of think about it. So having said all that, and again, trying to keep myself to 30 minutes as I'm doing my next series of Monday missions, let me just sort of recap a second about the key things to think about as you are prototyping and then turning that prototype into something that will not take you an inordinate amount of time or cost you an inordinate amount of money. All right, so pricing. Last time on the pricing. It's very important when you are pricing as a solopreneur who makes product to account for a number of things. The first is the materials that go into making. It's absolutely important for you to calculate exactly how much you've used and how much it cost you. So in my example, what I would need to do is measure my each piece of duct tape I've used, total that up into feet, yards, inches, look at the duct tape that I purchased, figure out how many yards really was there. So let's say there were 3 yards, and let's say I used 1.5 yards to make my bag. So what I would have to do is I would have to figure out how much that 3 yards cost me, and then divide it in half to get the cost of the material for my bag, because my bags are free. So I'm upcycling the fabric that I'm using is free. Okay. The second thing that I need to do is I need to come up with a system to make multiples. So as you're doing this, what you're going to do is you're going to figure out what is the fastest way to make them. I will also tell you, you will get a little quicker as you get good at that process. It's a great idea to write down the process so that you don't have to restart it every time you go back to making. Because face it, you might be making the tote bag, you know, for a week, and then all of a sudden you're making the backpack style. Well, those are 2 different things. So you really have to make sure, you can't say it takes the exact same amount of time for each one. The process is different. So you want to write the process down so that you are always consistent. And if you are going to have some discrepancies like I do, you might say, every time I do a vertical piece of duct tape, it is going to go under horizontal pieces of duct tape. And that way you will be consistent throughout everything you are doing. Once you have your process down, you want to actually set a timer and see how long it takes you to make one item. And then you want to think about what the skill level is that you need in order to make this particular product and what that skill level is worth per hour. Okay. So for me on the bag is a relatively easy thing to do. And in fact, I could teach very young people, probably about 8 to 10-year-olds, to do it. It goes pretty quickly and it's not super difficult. So I might say that for me, I would pay myself $10 for every bag, right? Or $5 for every bag or whatever. Now, don't forget that there are also other materials that you might need that you're using. Okay, so all of those have to go into your cost. And don't forget that if you have a separate studio space, you also need all that overhead to be covered. So you have to put a little percentage in everywhere. So then you find out exactly how much it cost you, and you're going to at least double that price for you to sell it. And you might even triple that price for you to sell it. It'll depend what the market will bear. So that's how you get your price. Other ways to make sure that you are maximizing your materials is to consider how you're putting them together so that you're giving the product that the consumer will want with as minimal effort as possible. So that's why I was saying, rather than take every bag all the way apart, which takes some time, and consider it and then reconstruct the edges, take the bag apart, but only so much so that you are keeping the work the finishing work that's already been done for you, some of the structural work that's already been done for you intact. This saves you a great deal of time, and it starts to make it profitable for you to consider, how can I use this material in such a way that maybe I can get a little bit of return on investment? So, prototyping's great. Remember that it is always going to take you time to prototype and that you may have to go through a number of iterations before you really get to the final piece of what it is you want to do. I want you also to remember that up front, when you are designing anything, you may have hours in on your design. You will not get the hours you spent prototyping and designing on one item. You have to consider it over the life of the product that you are creating. So if I'm designing one of these bags and it takes me 3 hours to come up with a design that I like, but that then is the one that I'm going to go with, I can't try and get back 3 hours of my design time in one shot. I have to consider, okay, I'm going to need to sell 100 bags to get back my design time, or 50 bags or 20 bags to get part of my design time back. So you have to be fair, because in the end, if you price it too high, the market won't bear it, the customers won't buy it, so you will have started with zero and you will end with a zero, all right? The other thing that's important to remember about pricing is you want to take the time to really figure out what I've talked about. Because if you enter the market at too high a price, you will price people out. And if you enter at too low a price, it will be very hard for you to increase your price. It's hard to increase from too low a price because people have already seen it lower. It's hard to decrease from a high price because then your reputation and your design aesthetic and everything can suffer. So critically look at what your product is. Critically look at how much it costs in terms of materials, overhead, and labor. See what doubling that will do for you, and think very hard if that will actually be a price the market will bear. How could you know that? Well, here's a really great way to do it. As I always say, Do not ask your friends and family or your friends' friends and family, because they all have a connection to you. They love you and they want you to succeed. So they think you're great, and by proxy, they think anything you do or anything you make is great. But many of you will have social media followings where you can set up a poll and you could say, thinking about introducing this beach bag, which price point do you think is the best value? And you could do a little video. You could talk about, here's what goes into the beach bag. Here's what the benefits are. Here's how long it takes me to make it. And then you can say, okay, so what do you think is a fair price for this beach bag? And you could try, say, 3 different prices: your rock bottom low, your wish list high, and your in between there, and see what the most people say. If you can get that unbiased kind of opinion, and again, I know they may be your followers, but let's just remember that your followers, if you have a large, I mean, not large necessarily, but a significant group of people who follow you, who are not your friends and family, then this can be a very good way to do it. You could also see if you can kind of get to, through a variety of other organizations that you might have or networks that you might have, a poll out to people to see what they think. So those are some ways for you to figure out how to be priced right and how to put it into the market priced right. Here's the deal for me. I believe that there probably is a market at the green market where I'm working as material girl this summer who would purchase these remade bags. I believe that they would purchase them probably for anywhere between, say, $5 and I think I could make bags that would go from $5 to $20. The people who were looking at the original bag that I made said it looked fantastic and they would spend $40 for that bag. But that bag took too long, takes too much, and it's not worth $40 at retail for me. But I also want you to remember that anything I would make off of these bags is over and above what I'm being paid in my side hustle to do my side hustle. So it's just goes into my pocket for me, really. So the motivation for what I might need and how I might price these particular bags is quite different than if I was trying to make a living off of these bags. And so my goal in making these bags is that they're fun and they're a creative outlet for me. If I was to sell them, it's less of the original bags that I'd like to upcycle sitting in my house. So for me, it's like, great, I'm getting it out of my house. If you're going to pay me to take it away, that's fantastic. And if you are going to like the next life of it and you're going to enjoy it and use it even for a season, that makes me very happy. If I had to make my living on this, I would have a very different idea about my pricing. So again, thinking about your motivation for your pricing is ultimately important. But if you really want to make money, you have got to follow the steps and the rules that I have given you. You've got to have an accurate cost. You've got to have an accurate cost of your materials, your overhead, and your labor. And you have to at least double it so that you are building in for your profit. And that's the end of that story. So I hope you all have a great week, and I'll see you next time. I'm not sure what we'll be doing. I do know what I will be doing for Material Girl this week, so maybe we'll have a recap of that, or maybe we'll talk a little bit more about some other things. Have a great week, everyone. Thanks, Neil, for watching. See you soon.